And I dare say that it's a major achievement for which we should all be proud of ourselves as Nigerians, as the people who cherish life, who love community, and wear our green with such enviable pride. A people of charm, people of intellect, hard work, a people whose cultural ethos is insurmountable, a proud people who wear our national colors with such gusto anywhere you find them in the world. We remained unbowed in spite of the many challenges over the years. Now, with the renewed hope agenda of the Tinubu administration, so much is going on for infrastructure, for health, and the digital economy, among others. Earlier today, His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu addressed the joint National Assembly session, saying, quote, "Year by year, election after election, every time we debate instead of battle, discuss instead of fight, and argue instead of destroy, we preserve the institutions of democracy." Truly powerful words from Mr. President. And to add gravitas to all that has happened today on this important day, we celebrate 26 unbroken years of democracy in Nigeria. My name is Eugenia Abu. I welcome you all. Happy Democracy Day. Our theme today is consolidating the gains of Nigeria's democracy, necessity of enduring reforms. Today we celebrate, we reflect, and we promote the gains of democracy while pledging to do more and working hard to close gaps. To set the ball rolling for this event, allow me welcome the man who describes Mr. President as Professor of Infrastructure, a technocrat, former governor, former senator, and now Secretary to the Government of the Federation, His Excellency Senator George Akume, as he makes his way to the podium to deliver his welcome address. I'd urge you to keep clapping. It's a long walk. Thank you very much.
His Excellency, the Vice President Kashim Shettima, GCON, representing Mr. President. His Excellency Babagana Kingibe, GCON, former Ambassador, former SGF, former elected Vice President. Your Excellency the Governors, Your Excellency the Governors, the Head of Service, members of the Federal Executive Council, members of the Diplomatic Corps, special advisors, party leaders, former secretaries to the Federation of Nigeria, permanent secretaries, service chiefs, the guest speaker, the Abiola family, the great Nigerian youths, our great women, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is right for me to start by congratulating all Nigerians on occasion of the 26 years of unbroken democratic rule. At a period where many African countries are sliding back into military rule and dictatorship, Nigeria is powering forward in democratic rule. Even though we have not attained the democratic heights envisioned, we are confident that our path is straight and will lead us to our desired destination. Today's celebration would not have been possible were it not for the commitment and determination of ordinary Nigerian citizens who stood strong in the face of military oppression, brutality, and rights denial. These Nigerians were led by some of the elites. The June 12 struggle was a watershed as millions of our countrymen and women poured out on the streets from Lagos to Ilorin, Kaduna to Kano, Ibadan to Makurdi, Bauchi to Jos, Port Harcourt to Enugu, from the towns and villages to cry for democracy and just governance coalesced into a movement. That is the June 12 movement. That movement gave birth to the new democratic journey. We are here today because many fought, many died. Some survived. Many were brutalized. Many disappeared. Many lost limbs. Many were imprisoned. Many gave up all their resources, and many never recovered. To all of them, we owe a debt of gratitude. One of the survivors is today the President of Nigeria, His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who is not only deepening our democracy, but also growing our economy. We can only immortalize them by ensuring that we guide and guard our democracy, that we work to bring development to Nigeria. Democracy without development is empty and is bound to fail. Our theme for today is consolidating the gains of Nigeria's democracy, necessity of enduring reforms. Nigeria's continuing journey of democracy is now firmly in the hands of someone, a leader who knows and is a foot soldier of democracy as well as a patriot to the core. As a key figure in Nigeria's struggle for democracy, Bola Ahmed Tinubu indeed faced challenges and made sacrifices in pursuit of democratic governance. His efforts contributed to the country's transition to democracy, and his commitment to democratic principles have been notable. He has embarked on an unprecedented journey to re-engineer Nigeria and put it on the right footing. He is tackling challenges with respect to the economy and development of nationhood, as well as building the needed infrastructure for rapid development. He has also instituted relevant reforms where needed. In 2 years, the impact of these reforms are quite visible. Strong indicators abound to show Nigeria is on the right track. Our keynote speaker today is Professor Sam Egu. He is a scholar of international standing, who will help us navigate this theme and interrogate the necessity of reforms in a democracy. A panel discussion will follow to marinate the theme further and make it relatable. On this Democracy Day celebration, I urge all of us to rededicate ourselves to the ideas of nation building and the rule of law. I urge us to continue to support Mr. President as he leads Nigeria with purpose and determination. Nigeria, we hear thee, our dear native land. Though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Let these words urge us on to build a stronger and beneficial democracy. Happy Democracy Day. I would like to extend my heartfelt appreciation to my colleagues, the members of the Federal Executive Council, for their resilience and invaluable contributions towards the successful implementation of Mr. President's renewed hope agenda. Your dedication, tireless efforts have been instrumental in driving progress and achieving key milestones. Thank you profoundly for your commitment to serving the nation and advancing Mr. President's visions. To our progressive governors, thank you for quality service delivery. And for the leadership of our great party, we say thank you and congratulations for expanding the frontiers of the APC. And to the various cadres of our party, we say don't look back. Better days are ahead of us. And to the great Nigerian youths, the future is yours. Let's build it together. Thank you very much.
His Excellency, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, delivering a warm welcome address on this very important day for Nigeria, a kaleidoscope of what Nigeria is, our geographical regions and the beauty of the nation, and a salute to the foot soldiers of Nigeria's democracy, to include His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, a president who is truly in a hurry to leave Nigeria better than he found it. Let's give a round of applause again to the SGF. Thank you very much, sir. Your Excellency, when I grow up, I would like to be a professor. But the man of the moment who will do the honors to the keynote address today is a man of unflappable credentials, cerebral and forward-looking. Permit me, sir, to read a short biodata of this gentleman who will deliver a historical keynote address on a day such as this. Professor Samuel Egu is a professor of political economy in the Department of Political Science, University of Jos, North Central Nigeria. He has spent the better part of his adult life as a scholar, researcher, and teacher since joining the services of the University of Jos in April of 1986. Professor Egu received his bachelor honors in political science in the second-class upper division from the Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria in 1982, and received both the master's and doctoral degrees in political economy and development studies from the University of Jos. Early in his academic career, he won a number of fellowships. These include the West African Research Association, spent at Northwestern University, Evanston, Chicago, in the United States, the Fellowship of the Center for Advanced Social Science, Port Harcourt, and the Nordic Africa Institute, Uppsala, Sweden, as guest researcher. He has published extensively in local and international journals and has published books and over 80 chapters in books. Professor Samuel Egu is a member of many professional associations, including the membership of the Nigerian Political Science Association and the African Association of Political Science, and served as president, Nigerian Political Science Association. He has held a number of positions, including team lead, governance and peace building, UNDP Nigeria Country Office, support to the coordination of the Joint Donor Basket Fund and the successor project, Democratic Governance Development, Kogi State Delegate to the 2014 National Conference. He served on the Committee on Devolution of Power, convener Citizens Forum for Constitutional Reform. He presently serves as the Resident Electoral Commissioner of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Benue State, and previously served in this capacity in Niger State. Please give a warm democratic welcome to Professor Samuel Egu as he makes his way to deliver today's There you hear it. All his university people are making great. My brother and friend, Professor Samuel Egu. Welcome.
Thank you. The President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Ahmed Bola Tinubu, who is not physically present, and the Vice President who is representing him, the SGF and other government officials who are present. I don't want to ridicule myself by going through a protocol list that I cannot manage well. I therefore want to skip that and go to my presentation. I think the SGF's address captures all that one can say about the importance of today, so I won't do that. But I would like to tell or speak to three important issues about democracy before I go to the presentation, and I'll be very rapid. I won't take a lot of our time. The first one is that everything about democracy is about struggle, it's about contestation. And I think the fact that citizens of this country fought consistently, to revalidate June 12th, and to also insist that we need to set aside and make it Democracy Day, points to that element of struggle. But I think of democracy in terms of contestation around its meaning, around its practice. And if you look at the literature, there are more than 3 types of democracy. So just to point to that, important issue. The second one is that democracy cannot survive unless there is commitment on the part of citizens. And when I talk about citizens, I'm talking about leaders, elected leaders, because they are also citizens. I'm also talking about followers, because they are also citizens. But what I really mean is that what you require to sustain democracy is democratic citizenship, whether you are a leader, whether you are a follower, so that you show commitment to the values, the enduring values of democracy, which includes negotiation, which includes consensus building, which includes trade-off, and so on and so forth. The third point, and I think we need to bear this in mind so that we are not carried away because we are celebrating 26 years of democracy. And that third point is that, and you can go to the global arena to understand what I'm saying, is that democracy is not a unilinear journey. There is nothing to suggest that you can move rapidly and smoothly from point A to the last point. Democracy itself is challenged by internal contradictions. In fact, if you read the literature today, they're actually talking about the contraction of democracy. The kind of enthusiasm we had in the early 90s has waned. People are now talking about democratic backsliding. And I think we need to guard our democracy. Let us not assume that it will progress on a smooth journey. And so this is why vigilance is important. I miss the fact that the president himself is not here today physically, but he will hear this story. For me, the most defining moment for Nigeria's democracy, going back to 1999, happened in 2003, when one of the major parties in this country became so comfortable that said it will rule this country for 60 years. But what the president did, which I want to speak to, is what happened in the 2003 general election, when the AD, the Alliance for Democracy, was uprooted from all the states in the Southwest, with the exception of Lagos. And I said to myself, If Lagos gave way in that year's election, democracy would have died before now, because it is Lagos standing still and the then governor using that survivor to rebuild the party, then move to another party, and then reinvigorate that party in the Southwest. That was a singular factor that preserved multi-party politics at that time. And I think he will remember this, that it was a great service to democracy. Your Excellency, the Vice President, I won't spend a lot of time, and there are 3 objectives that I'm going to speak to in this presentation. The first one, I'll focus on and pay attention to key progress that we have made in our electoral democracy since 1999. The second one, I will highlight the struggle of democratic governance with the twin challenge of national development and nation building since 1999. In fact, my own understanding that the 2 most tragic failures of post-colonial Nigeria is a failure of development and nation building. How has this democracy struggled with it? The third one, I will simply outline the key economic and governance reforms that are needed to consolidate this democracy. I then move to the general introduction of my presentation. I start by saying that we don't have debates in this country about what we want to achieve as a country. The ruling elite of this country, military, civilian, already have a consensus on what is national development. And if you want to understand, go back to the second National Development Plan document that spoke very well about the need to create a just and egalitarian society, a land of brightness and opportunity for its citizens, a great and dynamic economy, a free and democratic society, a just and self-reliant nation. If you put this together, what it tells us is that our country is supposed to be built as a social democratic society where equality of citizens is guaranteed. And that is why the Chapter 2 of the 1979 and the 1999 Constitution are very clear. The chapter that talks about fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy. If you read the Chapter 2 of our Constitution, what it envisions is the realization of what I call social citizenship. And for me, that chapter is more important than Chapter 5 on fundamental human rights. Because if you don't have access to opportunities and be able to do 1 or 2 things, Chapter 5 becomes meaningless. So, and I think we need to bear this in mind. And that is why, until the mid-1980s, when structural adjustment program was introduced, this country ran as a state-led process of capitalist modernization. But we have done that. Market reform took over in 1986, and we have remained with market reform. And I think for good reasons. For those who have read that era of state-led process of modernization, you could see elements of waste, you could see corruption, you could see government inefficiency, and you can see entrenchment of patronage politics. These things are well documented. I don't need to go over them. But if you review the SAP era, you will agree with me that it didn't help many African economies, including our own, where industries disappeared, where the value of the domestic currency became thoroughly weakened, and so on and so forth. And Nigerians like other African countries, in that context of wanting to transit from that economy or society where government held everybody down, decided to support democratization. And that is why we have been in democracy since 1999. But I think there are other issues I want to draw attention to, and that I will just take the last one, and that is the whole problem of absence of national unity and integration. It doesn't matter to people, what it means to be a Nigerian. A pan-Nigerian identity is lacking. People talk about their ethnicity. Sometimes they talk of their indigeneity. But let us remember that all these things are about political exploitation of our differences. We need to live the spirit of one Nigeria that is focused to be a leading country in Africa in this century. Mr. Vice President, having said this, I'll simply talk about democracy since 1999. There are a few things I want to point to. Regardless of theoretical positions about democracy, democracy has a simple meaning. It presupposes the type of government or political system ruled by citizens. And democracy is underpinned by certain non-negotiable values. And this includes substantial individual freedom of belief and opinion, the right of all adult citizens to vote and to run for public office, genuine openness and competition in the electoral arena. There are many more that I don't want to go into. Now, if you look at democracy, election is a key marker, and I think we have done well since 1999. Particularly since the electoral cycle of 2007, when, even before results are collated, the president is announced. I think there has been a lot of improvements in our election. We have seen alternation of power since 2010 at the national level, and many cases of alternation of power at subnational level. We have seen peaceful transfer of power, because this is exactly what democracy needs to do for Africa, because that's where the African crisis begins. Once you have sit-tight leaders that don't want to go. So democracy in this country has brought about respect for tenure of office. And I know the fight in 2007 when Nigeria said, no, there must be respect for that constitutional limit, to terms of office. At the same time, I think we have made progress, but there are also challenges. And if you talk to Nigerians, they talk a lot about the deficit and lack of public trust in our electoral process. Sections of the political class and civil society are very, very bitter that this is not the type of electoral democracy we need. But I said, particularly with respect to the 2023 general election that has been taken to the cleaners, that there are many things we forget to understand about that election. And what is that? That election, for the first time, resulted in the most diverse parliament. In that election, about 5 governors were stopped from going to Senate. In that election, there were many successful cases of mandate protection across the country. In that election, technology did a lot in terms of intervention, so that even as we complain about 2023, we need to realize that democracy is a journey and that we have not done badly and there is room for improvement. Now, one of the things that Nigerians have never debated, and I simply want to raise it, but I won't discuss it, and that is the fact that we are practicing the type of democracy that is called liberal democracy. And this type of democracy has become a global project. That is why the IMF and the World Bank, that's the one they are driving, that's the one they are supporting. This democracy has a major weakness because it's really not about democratic accountability to citizens. And that is why, for a democracy of this type to work, you need a very strong civil society, you need citizens, and so on and so forth. But a time will come that we need to debate the type of democracy we need as a country. Now, the overall consequence of what democracy has not been able to complete with the task of development is what you see in the big human security problem of this country. A section of my paper has actually outlined those. Because I don't want to waste time, I will simply mention a few of them. How come that a country so endowed with resources, with human capacity, and with good people will today have the largest deposit of poorest people? Is something we need to think through. This country has been declared the poverty capital of the world. This is something that I think is not good for us. And we have less population than China and India. And then look at the percentage of people that are in extreme poverty. Look at fragile state index and all other key indicators of development. We are not doing well. And that is why we need to reinforce our democracy so that we can address these challenges. And my point is that all the problems I've outlined are not problems you can attribute to the regime in power today. It's a cumulative consequence of the failure of post-colonial life. And all of us must feel guilty because we haven't done what we need to do to address the key challenge of development. And for me, to go forward, what we need is paradigm change in terms of governance, in terms of our democratic politics, and in terms of statecraft. But also, more importantly, we must address frontally the question of economic reform. And that is where I get to the third part of my presentation. And I think I'm more than halfway through into my presentation. So endure me a little. Now, in May 2023, the president of this country announced the removal of fuel subsidy. That was quickly followed by the unification of Naira's exchange rates with the major currencies of the world. Now, I read the Afrobarometer report on this. And Afrobarometer says that a large majority of Nigerians disapprove of the government decision to remove fuel subsidies, with more than half calling for their reinstatement, even though at the expense of other key sectors, such as health and education. But the point is, when it comes to dealing with this problem, it is not about populist gestures. What you require is courageous decision-making, bearing in mind the trade-offs that are involved. So, the point is that there was no way, if you were realistic, that you will continue, particularly when you are privy to reports on the corruption that has attended to fuel subsidy regime in this country, and the fact that the target people don't even get to benefit from subsidy. But we must be able to confront corruption at another level, because even countries that tell us to remove subsidy, give subsidy. They give subsidy. But that's not the real point I want to make. My point is, yes, these two policies have done a lot in terms of increasing the cost of living for many Nigerians, especially the low-income households. And of course, it has driven inflation primarily by escalating food and fuel prices, and foreign exchange volatility was also a key problem at the beginning, but this is stabilizing. Now, we have seen a lot of positive outcome from the reform. So even if you were an extreme critic of the reform, 2 years ago, you need to be a bit sober, and I'm relying on government official statistics about what has happened in the context of the twin reform that we are dealing with. I won't go into the detail, but we have seen growth in the economy. And without growth, you can't tackle poverty. Growth is good. The problem with growth is when it is not inclusive. So once you are achieving growth, you have crossed the first bridge. The second bridge is how to make this growth inclusive. How can you address the problem of poverty? These are the kind of things that you then, and that is why I think a lot has been done. In the last 2 years, we have heard about reviving scholarship for students. I went to school in my days on government scholarship, but it disappeared. So this is becoming something that I think we need to support and introduce transparency into that process, because it will solve problems, particularly for people who came from my type of family background. We have also seen remarkable impacts of deregulation in terms of making money available to support poor households. I'm talking about what we have achieved in terms of national cash transfer program in the last 2 years. We have seen in health and social welfare benefit accruing to Nigerians. Revitalization of primary health care centers. Women are enjoying free access to cesarean operations. We have seen economic diversification in this country, with non-oil exports accounting for a huge part of government revenue. We have seen wage reform. I see youth corpers, they are now earning 77,000 per month. And my son, who entered camp today, will also enjoy. So I'm very happy about that. And you can go on and talk about the benefits of the reform. So the problem is not that we have reform, but it is to be careful. You know, I studied the World Bank, I studied the IMF, and they have a language about reform that is very sexy. They kept on telling us that post-colonial Africa made a choice between two roads, one wide, smooth, but leads to disaster. And that there's a narrow road full of thorns and leads to eternal life. If you are familiar with the Bible, you know exactly where this is coming from. So they said, Africans chose that wide road, and that's why we entered political perdition. So they now tell us to choose that road that is narrow and thorny, because there's life, or, we win at the end of the tunnel. It is very interesting to do reform. It is interesting to ensure that government doesn't carry burden that it's not supposed to carry. But we need, as a country, to strike a delicate balance between the neoliberal agenda and economic nationalism. It is important to listen to the advice of the bank and the fund, but at the same time, stick to those things that will lead to national redemption. You need to think more about obligation to your citizens and loyalty to your citizens. And I think this is where the commitment of the president, that by the time I leave, everybody will enjoy the benefits of change. That is why it is something we need to stand on, and that is something we need to put more pressure on him to deliver, because that is the only way we can strike a balance between the neoliberal agenda and the dictates of national economic survival. And I'm so convinced that the president has this kind of image, to leave a legacy for himself. And that's why we need to think about what we need to do from now. Yes, I've seen impressive figure in terms of revolution in agriculture, but I think we need to do more for a country, because these are comparative advantage. If Rwanda can depend on foreign exchange from agriculture, we are in a better position to do this. And I think the president's effort in terms of combating insecurity. And I saw the impressive statistics about that. If you don't do that and focus on that, our local farmers may not be able to enter their farms. You know, the Minister of Information comes from Niger. Some of the things I read while I was in Niger was very frightening, that farmers have to pay a fee to bandits, and they give them receipt for payment before they can enter their farm. You cannot win the battle against food insecurity. And I think this is something we need to support, and also do so with little consideration for the rights of those who are driving insecurity. That is where I differ. And I think we need aggressive industrialization in this country. The government is doing well in terms of tax reform. This is impressive. Nobody thought about this. The fact that there are multiple taxations in this country has driven away many people. But when you do industrialization, revive the basic industries, you can actually provide employment and take millions of people out of poverty. Then tax reform will yield higher return from a production-based economy. I'm getting to the end of my presentation, Mr. Vice President. I just want to say that, yes, we are a federal polity, and in the name of federalism, states claim autonomy. The president did well with the local government reform. When I go back to the 1976 local government reform document that tells us that we need genuine local government that can be a learning school for politicians, that can undertake key development activities which are lined up in the Constitution. I then say, why did we allow local governments to disappear? So reviving local governments and giving them autonomy is good. But I think we can move beyond that to support a program of local governance, which is more than functional local governments. You know, where you need to create real partnership between local government institutions, civil society and community people, and the state governments to put money into one basket to drive development, which they can all, you know, co-supervise and ensure accountability. I think we need this. I am also worried that, yes, if you look at the 36 states in the country, there are pockets of government effectiveness, but there are many states where governance does not happen. You can't develop a country. It's not the responsibility of the federal government alone. And we need to leverage on the strength of federalism and intergovernmental relations to connect the three levels of government to drive development. And if you do not do that, the state assemblies cannot even checkmate the governor. And that is why I think the president of this country needs to put all his weight behind autonomy for state assemblies in the ongoing constitutional reform agenda, because that will change the narrative of governance at subnational level. I think this is something we shouldn't play with. I read impressive story about what the EFCC has done in terms of anti-corruption, and I think the kind of money they have collected back from those who stole is more than what had happened in previous years. That is good. And there's one phenomenal example of one individual that had 753 duplexes, units of duplexes, which the EFCC has already collected back. This is impressive. But we need more than that. What we need is a comprehensive anti-corruption program that brings citizens, civil society, and those institutions together, while we focus on reforming those institutions and creating more capacity for them to do their work. 2 minutes, I'll go away. As I said, we need to safeguard our democracy. I am reading the book by David Runciman, How Democracy Ends. And I'm seeing Trump and the far right in Germany challenging the basic tenets of democracy. It's a warning sign that we do everything possible to safeguard our democracy. That's why we are celebrating. We need to support economic growth, but we need a reform agenda that helps us to be more equitable society. But more importantly, I want the president and his cabinet and those who are ruling this country to go back to the commitment they made in the APC agenda. That is a very, very powerful document that looks like being lifted from chapter 2 of the Constitution. If we do that and drive governance and reform, this country will be a different country altogether. I thank all of you.
Your Excellency, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, one of my greatest difficulties on this job is to present a man who is on his trajectory with a 2-minute end to his work. But we all know that Professor Sam Egu delivered on all fronts and did his nation proud. He has spoken about the reforms and how needed they are. He has spoken about the importance of addressing properly the issue of economic reform, the benefits of reform, and explicates the meaning of reform and also breaks down economic growth. He has also gone to look at itemization of what Mr. President and his team have been doing in the last couple of years to make Nigeria a much better place. Let's give a round of applause to Professor Sam Egu, who has delivered today's 26th Democracy Anniversary public lecture. We truly thank you for your keynote and for your insights. It's at this point, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, that it will be time for us to go to the panel. And because we are running for time, the day is fast spent, we're going to ask our moderator, whom I'm going to introduce, to spend only 20 minutes in total doing this panel session. Our moderator is a news anchor. She is a State House correspondent for Arise News. She is host of the prime time news program News Night. She has a master's degree in mass communication and a multimedia journalist. Her feet touching print, radio, and television. She has attended trainings at BBC, VOA, and some of the finest institutions in the world. She's named one of the top 50 women changing journalism's face across Nigeria. Please help me welcome Adesua Moran, who is our moderator for today as she makes her way up. Looking lovely in one of the Nigerian colors in her very, very green outfit. Welcome, Adesua. So, we're going to test her management of time. 20 minutes.
Great. Your Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, ably represented here by his Vice President, Kashim Shettima, GCON. Your Excellency, with your permission, I'd like to stand on all duly established protocols. As you see, the excellent MC, Madam Eugenia Abu, has put me on the spot to spend only 20 minutes. Good evening, everybody, and happy Democracy Day. Today, as we mark Democracy Day, we are reminded of how far we have come as a country. 7 election cycles, uninterrupted, peaceful transfer of powers, and most importantly, a resilient democratic spirit. A round of applause for Nigeria and Nigerians. But as has been established earlier by the able, distinguished Professor Egu, democracy is not just about ballots and elections. It is about governance that matters, inclusion that works, and the results that the people feel in their daily lives. And that is why this conversation is very timely today. The title of this panel is Delivering Democracy, Reform, Responsibility, and Results. And at the heart of that delivery is not politics or policy. It is the people. So how do we ensure that all of these great reforms that are driven by the Bola Tinubu-led administration are truly felt by the people, even to the grassroots, the most remote places of our great country, Nigeria? Our conversation this evening will help unpack some of the challenges highlighted by the professor, but to also explore enduring solutions. And to help me do that, please welcome with me, in no particular order, my distinguished panel of leaders and thinkers in their various fields. Oluwamiseun Olufemi White is a distinguished lawyer and financier operating at the nexus of finance, technology, and sustainable development. As CEO of Alami Capital, she leads high-impact investments that align global standards with local realities across Nigeria's critical sectors. A fellow and scholar at the Harvard University, her research explores innovation, law, and digital sovereignty. She is passionate about reimagining systems for a more just, inclusive, and self-determined African future. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Adesua, for that kind introduction.
Great. Joining our panel is Hansatu Adegbite, a seasoned executive with over 2 decades of leadership across nonprofit, private sector, and public service. She is a trailblazer in women's empowerment, corporate governance, and strategic partnerships. She does have fans in the room. With experience on multiple national and international committees, including the United Nations Women and the Presidential Advisory Council for Women and Girls, Hansatu is a faculty member at leading institutions like NIPS, Pan Atlantic University, and she's the immediate past executive director of Women in Business. Welcome, Hansatu. Our next panelist is a barrister, Ismail Hamed, widely recognized as the face of youth engagement in the APC since 2013. He has served as the party's national youth leader and is a member of the Board of Trustees. He was also special advisor to President Muhammadu Buhari and currently chairs the governance subcommittee of President Tinubu's Policy Advisory Council. Ismail is the managing partner at Greenbridge Law Firm and the founder of teachfornigeria.org. It's a voluntary initiative encouraging privileged professionals to teach in public schools. He contested for the Kano Central Senate seat in 2023 and is currently pursuing a PhD in public policy. Please welcome Barrister Ismail Hamed. Well, I must say that this panel is already delivering a form of democracy, gender affirmation. With more women on this panel than men here, it is clear that we are moving from gender affirmation to gender presence. A round of applause, please. Barrister Ahmed, you're blessed amongst women. We don't bite, you're safe. So let me begin. I'll just go around to ask. We know about the reforms of this administration. We've heard from the guest speaker. He did say we have made strides, but there are also challenges. Particularly, he mentioned public trust. So I'm just going to go around the room. How do we move from electoral democracy to one that delivers tangible results to the Nigerian people in their daily lives? Let me begin with you, Hansatu. One reform, if you could hazard, if you could be a part of the President Bola Tinubu's cabinet, not that we're asking for an expanded cabinet, but what would that reform be?
Well, first of all, let me say that in the words of my Honorable Minister of Women Affairs, it is women o'clock. And Gender is always on my own agenda. And I can also say to you that even our keynote speaker did not touch anything on gender. So that is why it is important to have more women in leadership, because we are the only one that can speak to that. It is important for me to say that even though we are about 50% representation of women in Nigeria, the truth of the matter is that democracy has tried. We are not ungrateful, but men, we have a long way to go. We look at our National Assembly, we're still struggling with 3.8 and 3.7% of women, both in the Senate and the House of Representatives, and only 5% in the state legislative. Now, we are not, I'm very happy that our head of service is here. We celebrate the fact that our head of service is a woman doing great reforms. And we do have less than 15% of our permanent secretaries that are women, even though we have a workforce of about 54% in the Federal Civil Service. And I'm very happy to see that our permanent Secretary of Finance and, of course, of Women Affairs are women, because gender-responsive budgeting is very key, and we're coming there. But having said all of this, it is not all gloom and doom. We know that there have been a number of reforms, obviously, the not too young to run and the electoral reforms. But at the end of the day, I think what the women of Nigeria are saying is that we just want to help you in moving this nation forward. The men, you have done it yourselves for so long.
Okay.
And we know where we are. We have not gotten there yet. The soul of Nigeria and Africa is crying to be nurtured by women. And so we're saying, let us help you.
Okay.
And for most of the men that we say, these women have come again with their gender agenda. Don't allow God to hear your prayer and carry all the women out of this world, because you know that a lot of you will not survive 2 weeks without women. So
thank you very much.
I will just leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Hansatu. So Hansatu feels that more women in governance is that reform to deliver on democracy to the people. Barrister, let me come to you. Obviously, I'm sure you might have a different opinion. What's that one reform that would deliver democratic governance to the Nigerian people for them to feel in their daily lives?
Good evening. Well, I think I can't say if I know any one particular reform that can take care of this problem. What I can say, however, is this administration has done something that other administrations have been unable to do, or have found ways to do it, but they couldn't do it, which is autonomy to the local government. Now, how did they do that? Instead of going through the legal process and making it long and unwinding, the president instructed his attorney general to go straight to the Supreme Court for interpretation, because it's a matter of the Constitution. Now, that has been done on paper. What is left is for it to be done operationally, because we all know the president, the vice president, so many people sitting here, the secretary to the government of the federation, they were all governors at one time. There is simply no process at state level. Whatever the governor wants, the governor does, the governor gets. And I remember a governor that became a minister during Buhari administration, and the first trip he took, his colleagues, his staff that came with him to the government, to the ministry, were told to retire a fund of 5 million naira they were given. They couldn't believe it. They said, what is return? What is retire again? They didn't understand. They said, we used to pack money in our suitcases and we move, and there's nobody that asks us to retire. So if there is one reform, I think this government has already done it. The local government, there has to be an autonomy, there has to be life, there has to be activities at the local government for anything to be felt, so that people would have a responsive leadership at the local level. And number two, I think this is very important, the leadership recruitment model that we have in politics. Almost like in Nigeria, politics is the only profession that requires no qualification. Anybody who has a nuisance value of whatever kind can just jump in and be a leader. Politics is a serious business because it leads to leadership. So I think the leadership recruitment model should have serious criteria. I can understand when the Constitution was written, I can understand when the Constitution was written of 1999, it was copied in 1979. It was just 19 years after our independence. But now, Mr. Vice President, we're 65 years old. We can no longer accept just school leaving certificate or its equivalent as a reason to be a president. Thank you very much.
Barrister Ahmed, a reminder again, he's pursuing a PhD, so you can imagine. I wonder how we'll get rid of the nuisance value you talk about, but thank you so much. I asked for one reform, he gave two. Let me come to you, Oluwamiso. How do you think we can practically, involve the people? The people seem to feel neglected in some form, despite what the government does. How do we include them?
Thank you so much for that question, Adesua. I think one of the first steps is to reimagine where we see people to be gathered in. Mm-hmm. So we need to take the messages that we have, put them in the forms that people want to hear them in, and take them to the places that they are. For a lot of young people in my generation, we're not happy with just showing up on election day to cast our vote. We want to be a part of the systems that create these election cycles. We want to be a part of the systems that create these reforms and design them. So we want things like technology fellowships led by our state governments. We want to be a part of the various monitoring and delivery dashboards that are being created. For example, the Ministry of Youth has done wonderfully. Today, as a young person or anybody in this nation, you can go online and track every single youth initiative that this government is doing, and you can see where they're located, the local government areas, the states that they're in. These are the sorts of measures that I think we can continue to take to bring governance closer to young people.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Oluwamiso. I'll come back to your answer too. When Barrister Ahmed was speaking, he talked about local government. And I did hear Oluwamiso also mention local government and state governments. So there seems to be so much concentration at the center. But let's break this next round of conversation into themes. And I'd like us to begin with the economic reforms and the people. Economic reforms are necessary, but they are tough. How do we balance these bold reforms with the need for social protection so that growth doesn't deepen inequality?
I think the Ministry of Women Affairs are already ahead of us. We have the National Women Economic Empowerment Policy. The only thing we now need to do is implement and institutionalize it across the nation. When you look at wealth creation, for example, we do recognize that less than 1% of all public procurement goes to women-owned businesses. And globally, Nigeria is already known to have the highest number of female entrepreneurs. And so with that divide, if we institutionalize also affirmative procurement policies, what that means is that at least 30% of government contracts, public sector, even private sector, should go to women-owned businesses. There is no way it will not cascade into the rural communities. And I think some of the state governments in the past and even currently have done something excellently well in terms of where you have a male chairman, you have a female vice and vice versa. Yeah. And that has worked excellently well in a number of the states. So those for me would be my own contributions. Thank you.
Barrister, let me bring it back to you. I like that you highlighted the point about the state governments and the state governors as well as the local. But when these reforms are carried out, people feel that it begins and ends with the federal government, with the president, because they feel the toughest decisions are taken from the top. Now, how do you explain, do you think there's a better way to explain these policies beyond what is being done currently, that they are tough, but they are necessary? Do you think we can cascade that down better?
Yes, I think people generally, you see, reforms, economic reforms or economic decisions or policies are usually that are sound, are usually politically unpopular because they are tough. So the people that have the responsibility of explaining to the general public or to the citizens, much more than the appointees of the government, are the people who are elected by the people. The president and vice president, you need to move around the country and talk to people directly. When people are going through pains, they want to hear from the people that they cast their votes for. That cascades to a large extent. So you can't reform are necessary, but they have to come with empathy. What does empathy mean? I feel your pains. I understand what you are going through. The moment people understand the why, then it is okay for them to go through the how. But that has to be done by elected officials, governors, president, vice president, members of National Assembly. So it has to be more than just talking in Abuja or Lagos or policy hubs. It has to cascade. Policy prescriptions are usually technical. You need to break it down. That's why you need politicians to come in to be able to speak to people to carry the message downward. That's the most important.
But then, doesn't that put more responsibility back on the president and the vice president, the federal?
What happens? Well, no, not necessarily.
Subnational government. How do we strengthen subnational government?
Well, subnational government, like I said, there are a lot of people that just look, because right now I heard a governor, I think about 3 weeks ago, that was explaining to his people that I didn't remove fuel subsidy. What you are going through is as a result of the federal government decision. You know, that's not right, because he has gotten more money as a result of that. He's not telling them that part. But you see, engagement is what democracy is all about. There have to be people at every level that would have to keep people in power in check. Unfortunately, you have more of that at the national level. The civic societies are more responsive at the national level. The media are more responsive at the national level. And they let the subnationals get away with a lot of things. We in Kano, we are not allowing our subnational to get away. Well, maybe because he's in a different political party, but we put our eyes on on him as much as we can.
Okay, great. Let me come to your space, which is tech and the future, the voice of the youth. How can we use digital tools and tech to bridge the gap between citizens and their governments? Is it possible? Are we doing that enough?
So I gave an example of this dashboard that allows you to essentially see in real time every single project that is happening in this country aimed at young people. Mm-hmm. That is a feat that this country has never seen and that this government has taken. That is an example of how you can use technology to take governance closer to the people. But beyond that, there is a generation that has aspirations that go beyond what is currently in front of us. Technology means that we can see what is happening in America. We can see what is happening in China. So the world is a much smaller place. And so in that, we're looking for initiatives that help us to grow our innovative ideas. We're looking for both public and private to invest massively, not just in us at the end cycle of when our innovations are starting to take form, but in the knowledge economy, in the training. And thankfully, we're starting to see building blocks of that with the Startup Act, with 3MTT, with an active sort of step towards protecting our data governance. I mean, people talk about data, and I think, this year in particular has, I would hope, helped us to situate what data really means in this age. Our data governance is securing our future. It's securing our sovereignty. AI is what everyone's talking about. We're consumers of technology today, but this administration's working really, really, really hard actually to put building blocks that mean that we're not just consumers of technology without understanding. We're putting in place the right governance measures. And that's not happening in a vacuum. Let's break down what that means. That means in 10 years, when there is a young child born in Festac in Lagos, the information that they're consuming is not information that is being manufactured outside the shores of this country to shape their mind, but actually in-house, where the value is inward. And I mean, not just inward, because Nigerian companies are going global. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but
go ahead.
I think in sum, what we're looking for is local context, local collaboration, and local capital. Context is that our institutions, public and private, are supporting us as we innovate. Collaboration is not just supporting, is when private invests, for example, in a startup, government is also supporting, because what that says to markets is that there is confidence. And then in capital, I've just explained.
Indeed, and that opens doors, creates jobs, and cascades to the people. So,
and also increases patriotism. So today, a lot of young Nigerians are asking the question, what is Nigeria doing for me?
Great.
And this actually helps with that question.
Fantastic, Oluwamisho. Now, as we wrap up, this question will also go around, and I'd like to begin with answer 2. One visible step. In the beginning, I asked for one reform that we could take. But as we close, one visible step that the government can take in the next perhaps 12 months to build democratic trust, because again, we go back to public trust and building public trust.
Well, we're women. We won't ask for one. I have His Excellency here.
You can't remove hand statue from women and gender.
So we will ask for special seats for women. I know that there's a lot of requests around that, just to create that in the National Assembly. We will also ask for gender-responsive budgeting, because I can see that the Minister of Budget and Planning is here. And at the same time, to put the icing on the cake, we just want to ask for affirmative action for leadership positions for women, because with the women of Nigeria, we want a democracy that listens to our women, learns from our women, and leads with our women.
Thank you very much. Answer 2. To you, Barrister Ahmed. One visible step. One. I know you have many. One.
Leadership is a quality, it's not a position. People remember you by how you make them feel, not necessarily what you tell them or what you do to them. Leadership must be exemplified by the power of the example of the leader, not the example of his power. Please, we have one policy that can change, is that inclusion of younger generation in process of policy making. That is what I think would.
Thank you very much. Very quickly, Oluwamisho.
Okay. So you said I could only say one.
Yes.
I'm going to balance it out and do 2.
Very quickly.
Right. So I think a key thing we really want is we want to be involved in the process of reform. A key ask is that state governments consider having technology and governance fellowships in each state. And such fellow would be someone who is so brilliant that they're building the next innovation that is going to address a real problem that we face as a nation. The second key ask is that you actually support our youth bank. You capitalize it and you allow for it to function in a way that serves young people.
Again, democracy is not about the elections or the ballots, but governance that works, inclusion that matters, and the results that the people feel in their daily lives. Thank you so much to my brilliant panelists. I am Adesua Omoruan. Good evening and happy Democracy Day again.
Thank you very much to our panel. We appreciate them for the effort they put in to try and make the time. I knew you had so much to say, but time is fast spent. And this is an opportunity for Your Excellency, we thank you for being so gracious, for saying hello to our moderator and our panelists. Please, let's give them a round of applause. They have put women in the forefront and put the youth in the forefront and put economic growth in the forefront. Immediately now, we invite very quickly for her performance poet, Mariam Alan. You've got 3 minutes to bring it on and bring it to a close. Mariam, where are you? Keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. I see you. in your beautiful green attire. Please encourage our performance poet. Today is the day for women. We see that our moderator, our master of ceremony, our panelists, and now our performance poet. We thank you for giving us the opportunity in Nigeria on such a day. Welcome.
It's the President first. The President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, ably represented by our father, the Vice President, His Excellency Senator Kashim Shettima, honorable ministers, government officials, please permit me to observe the already existing protocol. My name is Mariam Bukar Hassan, and when we talk about consolidating the gains of Nigeria's democracy and the necessity of enduring reforms, we're talking about building the future of Nigeria. And to speak about building the future of Nigeria is to conjure up the ghost of a warrior, an Iroko tree that stood tall in the forest, survived the axe, with broken branches that answers questions of vulnerability, with falling dried leaves, creating a pathway leading to my heart, me, a citizen of a country whose hope lingers like the life of an antelope, who wakes up every morning with its heart beating out its chest because it knows there is a cheetah out there it must outrun, else it becomes prey. Praying every day that somehow we see the light and hope for the nation. To speak about building the future of Nigeria is to recall handshakes between the Princess Alexandra and Sir Tafawa Balewa in 1960 that held promises of generations, aspirations of what it is for a dream to come true, an answered prayer. To speak about building the future of my country is to revisit the words of Sir Nnamdi Azikiwe in 1959, where he said, "For 25 years of my life, I have fought for the freedom of Nigeria. Nigeria will gain independence on October 1st, 1960, and it makes no difference who becomes prime minister, whether Tafawa Balewa, myself, or Awolowo. So long as Nigeria is free, I will be satisfied." To speak about building the future of Nigeria is to acknowledge the citizen. So when a citizen says, "I love my country but because," words signifying doubt yet serving as a seal to conviction, like, "But I forgive my kinsmen, and for my country I will represent," like, "You broke my heart, but I still love you," with all the pieces that looks exactly like that on the map of my country that connects us. Yet most mistake it for scars, causing upheaval by digging up stories of injuries. Like, I wish to be taken back to the times when the 521 ethnic groups, the over 600 distinct languages represented love and diversity, when animosity had no room, so we collectively put it out of the house. To speak about building the future of my country is to recall times of the pyramids that was made up of the promise that earth did keep to us, and ours flourished with life that skyrocketed our economy, the groundnut pyramids. When the pyramids in Egypt stood no chance, had nothing to show but the weight of the dead on a living land. Our ancestors are gone, but we are not. Their time is over, but ours is now. We cannot go back to days of glory, but we can conjure up its ghost for inspiration. See, we can resent this government. We can resent this administration and the one to come. But if we do not engage in the process, hold ourselves accountable, Nigeria will never be great again. As I will always say, government cannot do it alone. It is an entity. Without all of us, it becomes an empty thing. And only through partnerships and collaborative relationships can there be an accelerated progress towards Nigeria's development. So when I speak about building the future of my country, I borrow the words of the Egyptians where they said, Everything dies, but time fears the pyramids. You and I are the pyramids. So show up in your grace, in your might, in your excellence, in everything that you are at the core of your existence. Show up because it is time to build the future of Nigeria and consolidate Nigeria's democracy gains. Happy Democracy Day.
Brilliant in all manners, particular, kindred spirit. I'm a poet myself, but if you leave me alone, I do not remember my lines. So that's a craft. As young people, I want to say talent choke for Nigeria. Let us celebrate Mariam Alan in her well-thought-out performance poem for Nigeria. We thank you most sincerely. Your Excellency, Mr. Vice President, representing the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, we're truly grateful for your time. It's a day worthy of celebration, and we have all come out in our finery. We are wearing our celebratory clothes, but the hall, the State House banquet, is also wearing a gay and celebratory aura, dressed in full green and white across the room. And if you take time to look at the boards around you, you will see the security scorecard of this administration and the achievements of His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his team under the Renewed Hope agenda. Community resettlement and economic recovery. The testimonies are all over the boards, and you may want to take time to look at them. It's now time to go to goodwill messages on a day such as this. We start with the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps. Let's welcome the High Commissioner of Cameroon to Nigeria, His Excellency Salahuddin Abbas Ibrahim. At this point, he's making his way to the podium, and he uses Your Excellency, Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, makes his way to deliver his goodwill message. I'd like to urge all our goodwill message deliverers to keep it at 3 minutes. We thank you very much, Your Excellency. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Your Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, ably represented by His Excellency, the Vice President, members of the government, members of the Diplomatic Corps, ladies and gentlemen, invited guests. It's an honor and a privilege for the Diplomatic Corps to be given the floor today, to address this assembly. We thank you very much for that. First of all, we would like to extend our warmest congratulations to the federal government of Nigeria and to the good people of Nigeria for the celebration of the Democracy Day. 26 years ago, the beginning of the democracy in Nigeria ended an endless cycle of coup and counter-coup. This was a point of departure for this peaceful time we are living now in Nigeria. And I have to say that the Nigerian model has inspired many of the African nations. Of course, we have to pay tribute also to a man who instilled the spirit which led to the 1999 process. I mean, Moshood Abiola. What to say about Moshood Abiola was not only a philanthropist, but a Pan-Africanist. Why? I am not a Nigerian, but I know that because his aura was far beyond Nigeria. On a certain personal note, as a Cameroonian, I have to say this, maybe many people in Nigeria do not know that. He was concerned with everything happening in the other African countries. Just an example. In 1990, in July 1990, at the World Cup in Italy, for the first time, an African team was performing very well. That was Cameroon. And what did he do? He left Nigeria and he came to Roma and went straight to the hotel of the Indomitable Lions, just incognito, just anonymous, to come and encourage the Lions and tell them, you are giving Africa honor, so I come to honor you. And he came there and stood with them 24 hours and encouraged them and took some of traditionalists from Yoruba land to work them and encourage them to go further. And this gave the impetus to the Indomitable Lions that now went to the quarterfinal for the first time for Africa. This is the man Abiola. So we remember him today. So the time is short. I would like just to say we are happy as a diplomatic corps, the observers of the international community, to celebrate this with the Nigerian people. And this hope, and we are happy that this hope instilled by Chief Abiola is now a renewed hope with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Thank you very much.
Longest serving diplomat in Nigeria, becoming the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps. Please give a round of applause to His Excellency Salahuddin Abbas Ibrahim, Cameroonian High Commissioner to Nigeria. We thank you for your very warm wishes to this nation. Your Excellency, we have the head of service of the Federal Civil Service here, and she has brought a battery of permanent secretaries to join us at this celebration. The President of the National Council of Women's Society, former Chief of Defense Staff, General Oluwasegun, and wives of ministers and former ministers, as well as members of the Federal Executive Council in their numbers. We thank you for being here with us. I've always wanted nothing else but to be a Nigerian, to be loved and wowed by the nation that birthed me, and for me to serve, having drank of its water and walked on its ever-yielding soil. Corn, groundnut, walnut, agbalumo, the most luscious pineapple anywhere in the world, gari and groundnut on a hot day with ice, suya to mesmerize. I truly would only be a Nigerian for its feistiness, community, ashwebi, and gorgeous celebrations. It's Democracy Day, and I'm truly a Nigerian. But no one understands this better than the man who has these things in his state. And today he represents the chairman of the Governors Forum. He is the chairman of the Progressive Governors Forum, His Excellency Senator Hope Uzodimma, who is coming here to deliver his goodwill. Please encourage him as he makes his way up. Thank you very much.
Your Excellency,
the President of Federal Republic of Nigeria, ably represented by our amiable Vice President, distinguished Senator Kachim Shettima, GCON, the Secretary to the Government of the country, and members of Federal Executive Council in our midst, distinguished ambassadors, stakeholders, leaders, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor to address this distinguished gathering on this very important day in our national life. I thank Mr. President, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, and the organizers of this year's Democracy Day for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to speak. For me, it's a very rare privilege which I will treasure. We've come together here at the State House Conference Center to reflect on the theme, consolidating on the gains of Nigeria's democracy, necessity of enduring reforms. The theme speaks to the heart of where we are as a democratic nation and reminds us of what must be done to consolidate and safeguard the gains of the democratic journey we have traveled. In essence, we are here to commemorate Democracy Day, which is celebrated on June 12th every year. I'm therefore privileged to be invited to speak on democracy and the rule of law, lessons from June 12th, which is deeply situated within the theme. I think this conversation is very necessary on a day like this to keep the profound lessons of June 12th alive and serve as a political compass for the future. The date June 12th does not appear in our calendar by accident. It earned its place through pain, through sacrifice, and collective resolve. It represents a point in our national journey when the people made a clear choice and the system responded in disagreement. In recognizing June 12th, the APC-led government did more than declare a public holiday. It corrected the record. It restored the name of Chief MKO Abiola to its rightful place in our political and democratic history. The action also gave deserved recognition to a generation of activists, a generation of journalists, exiles, and more importantly, our voters who waited too long for the truth to prevail. Abiola died in custody. His wife, Kudrat, was assassinated. Many others were detained or forced into exile, while some simply disappeared. Yet, even under repression, the demand for justice continued. The democracy we practice today did not come through gradual reform. It arrived through resistance, through pressure and perseverance from fellow patriots who put their lives on the line for democracy to thrive. We owe a debt of gratitude to those who stood firm and spoke out when it was easier and safer to stay quiet. Their resilience created the space we now occupy. Their example still speaks to us because democracy is always a work in progress. It is either deepened or diminished. It expands with vigilance and fades with neglect. Let us take a moment to reflect on what democracy actually involves. Essentially, it is a system where the people, through periodic elections, shape leadership and guide national direction. It draws its legitimacy from elections, but its stability depends on public vigilance, the active participation of the people and the media in the governance process. In this framework, the rule of law is not an accessory, it is the spine. It is indeed the oxygen of democracy. It ensures that decisions follow procedures and that authority submits to standards and that every citizen, regardless of their office, origin, or lives under the same code. The principle does not fluctuate with circumstance. It holds steady even when the terrain is unsettled. On the other hand, the judiciary, the bastion of democracy, stands firmly in defense of citizens, the citizens' rights, and also guides against the abuse of power. The events of 1993 tested that principle. The judiciary came under strain. Court orders clashed. Legal clarity gave way to confusion. Judges faced pressures that blurred the lines between duty and fear. While some showed restraint, the system struggled to offer the firmness that the moment demanded. The media stepped in. Nigeria's press house, large and small, refused to be muzzled. Journalists operated from endangered houses. Editors published under threat. Headlines became acts of defiance. Their courage helped keep the facts breathing. Their refusal to retreat emboldened the ranks of democratic activists. Yes, civil societies filled another gap. Activists, students, professionals, and religious leaders rallied in towns and across borders. They mobilized opinion, raised funds, and maintained pressure on the regime. Some were arrested, some fled, yet the core of the movement endured. It adapted to crackdowns and built solidarity networks beyond our borders. The political class responded unevenly. Some chose self-preservation. Others pursued appointments from the same regime that annulled the elections. This fracture weakened the pushback and delayed progress. But amid that uncertainty, a few voices kept the hope alive. One of those voices now gallantly leads the nation, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR. He was part of the resistance. At a time when alignment offered safety, he chose exile and advocacy. Today, he governs a country he once fought to free. That act from dissident to president says something about the endurance of conviction. Now let's consider the electoral body that conducted the historic vote under Professor Humphrey Musu. The National Electoral Commission operated professionally, even as court injunctions swirled around them. The results were already being released when the hammer fell on them. The military intervened, and the process stopped midstream. But the Commission's conduct gave us a glimpse of what an impartial, well-run election could look like. It also demonstrated that it is possible to conduct a free, fair, and credible elections in our climate. Our task now is to move from glimpses to guarantees. That means strengthening the independent National Electoral Commission, shielding it from manipulation, and ensuring that those who lead it are choosing from their integrity. Without a credible umpire, even the best voter turnout must yield controversy. There are also lessons to be learned from the structure of political leadership. Ideological clarity was absent in the aftermath of June 12. Instead of aligning around shared beliefs, parties often collapse into alliances of convenience. That weakness allowed the annulment to be rationalized by some people, while some people also ignored the result, the consequence of the annulment. If the political class had stood together, history might have taken a different course. We cannot undo the past, but we can learn from it. Political parties today must move beyond personalities. They must articulate values. They must train successors, and they must compete on policy, not slogans. That is how voters learn to make informed choices. And it is how governments become accountable after elections. Let me also speak about civic responsibilities. Democracy does not rely on institutions alone. It requires the active participation of citizens, people who will vote, people who ask questions, people who write and engage. When citizens withdraw, bad actors advance. When people participate, systems adjust. Young Nigerians must see themselves as part of this system. They must see themselves as participants, not mere spectators. You inherited the rights earned in 1993. You must also inherit the responsibilities therein. Change comes from active participation, not docility. There is also the matter of political will. No constitution, no matter how perfect, can enforce itself. No system, however well designed, can resist manipulation without principled actors. At critical moments, leaders must choose direction. Not every choice will be popular, but it must always be defensible in terms of public interest and national stability. We have had that kind of leadership now. We have this leadership under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR, one that understands the difference between strength and stubbornness, one that can hold institutions accountable without weakening them, one that listens, not just reacts, one that is answerable to the people in visible and measurable ways. That is the spirit behind the Renewed Hope agenda. The removal of fuel subsidies, though challenging, has opened up competition in the downstream sector, helping to stabilize prices and redirect public funds towards infrastructure and education. The Nigerian Education Loan Fund is widening access to higher learning, ensuring that no willing student is denied opportunity because of poverty. The Electricity Reform Act is no longer an abstract policy. The decentralization of the power market is already enabling, and 24-hour supply is becoming realistic in some parts of the country. These efforts are the signs of a government serious about translating governance into real outcomes, where progress can be seen, felt,
and sustained. That deserves our support and encouragement. As we commemorate June 12th, let us not reduce it to mere history. What is possible is that when Nigerians decide, people should support and follow. It shows the limits of coercion, and it also exposes the gaps in our structure which must be closed. Today, the road ahead requires commitment. Institutions must be built to survive transitions. Political actors must agree on basic rules. The press must remain independent. The courts must act without fear. And citizens must stay involved beyond election day. This is how democracy becomes routine. Not in ceremony, but in culture. Not in grand declarations, but in consistent practice. The work is not over yet, but we are not starting from scratch either. We carry the lessons of June 12th. Let's honor those lessons, not in abstract terms, but in how we govern, how we vote, and how we defend our democracy and institutions. For me, one of the lessons from June 12th that must keep aflame in our hearts is this: the supreme will of the people, expressly expressed through the ballots, will always prevail. All over history, the evidence is there that the will of the people can only be delayed, but not denied. I want to thank you for listening, and I want to also crave your indulgence to inform you that I spend not only my time, but the time of other governors who are not here. May God bless all of us.
The rule of law is not an accessory. And the three arms of government are important, and democracy did not come easy. Let's give another round of applause to the Imo State Governor, who is the chairman, Progressive Governors Forum, and also spoke on behalf of the chairman of the Governors Forum, His Excellency Senator Hope Uzodimma. It's at this point that we immediately call up the immediate past secretary to the government of the Federation, technocrat, patriot, a Nigeria's Nigerian, who stands firm for democracy, His Excellency Dr. Boss Mustafa.
Your Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, ably represented by His Excellency, the Vice President, distinguished Senator Kashim Shettima, GCOA, the Governor of Imo State, Your Excellency, Ambassador Babagana Kingibe, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, the Head of the Civil Service, members of the Federal Executive Council here present, the family of MKO Abiola here present, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. When I was asked to bring a goodwill message, I hesitated a little bit. But reflecting back the last 32 years, late Muhammad Waziri and myself, with a couple of others, had the unfortunate responsibility of conveying the news of the suspension of the collation of the results of the June 12th presidential election in 1993. Our operation base then was the Nikon Hotel. And I remember when we got back to inform our principal then, Ambassador Babagana Kingibe, who was running the operation center at the Hilton Hotel, while MKO Abiola was in Lagos, that the NEC there, under Nwosu, had been instructed to suspend the display and the collation of the results. And that was the beginning of the episodes that ran through the sessions of the June 12 crisis. The second reason why I offered to give this goodwill message is because in 2018, under President Buhari, I was secretary to the government of the Federation, when he institutionalized June 12th, and I oversaw the celebration of June 12th for 4 consecutive years. And for that reason, this evening, Your Excellency, Mr. Vice President, I offer to Nigeria congratulations for an enduring democracy for 26 years, unbroken. And I pray for you and the President, because I know undeniably you've been prepared for this job, to lead our country in the quest of sustaining what we struggle for and deepening the roots of democracy, and also ensuring that you take the citizens of Nigeria to the promised land. That can only be achieved with citizen participation and the guided leadership you provide. Congratulations and happy democracy. God bless Nigeria.
We thank the former Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Dr. Boss Mustafa, for prayers for Nigeria and warm wishes to the nation. This is going to be our trajectory, and I would like to please encourage everybody in the back to be quiet, because we still have His Excellency in the room. Please be quiet and keep the room in order. We're going to go to the vote of thanks, and after that we're going to call on the Minister of Information to review some books for us today, after which it will be my honor to invite the representative of His Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the number 2 citizen in the country. I would like at this point, therefore, to invite to the podium a man who understands what time it is. We have had cases where people have been assigned the vote of thanks and they come and say, thank you very much, in one line. But the man who has been saddled with this responsibility today is a man very much after my heart, who understands the very definition of Nigeria and just how thankful we are as a nation for this day. Help me welcome to the podium Honorable Minister of Budget and National Planning, Senator Atiku Bagudu, to deliver his vote of thanks. No, after the vote of thanks, sir, the Minister of Information will do the honors. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Senator Kashim Shettima, Your Excellency, the distinguished Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Vice President-elect at one time in our national life, Ambassador Baba Gana Kingibe, Your Excellency, the Governor of Imo State, my brother, Uzodima. For want of time, I will respectfully recognize all those who have been recognized, and on behalf of the committee that organized this lecture, and indeed on behalf of all of us in Mr. President's team, I want to thank all those who responded to this invitation, and appreciate all the speakers and the panelists, particularly the young members of the panel and the landing. And without preempting our very, very brilliant Vice President, to acknowledge and be grateful that they accepted the necessity of enduring reforms. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in the renewed hope agenda, brought to the fore the necessity of us confronting our realities, the core of which are decades of missed opportunities, not because people are doing the wrong thing, he doesn't want to blame game, but certainly we have not been growing at the rate we ought to be growing at. And consequently, 2 years ago, when he took office, we are not where we want to be. Our revenue as a proportion of GDP is the third lowest in the world then. But just by removing subsidy, it has moved from 9% of GDP to about 15% of GDP. I recall a European Commissioner for Partnership telling Mr. President that the European average is about 40%, and that sometimes they even have difficulty convincing their citizens of why they should take resources from their own citizens and give it to those who cannot take from them, who cannot even take revenue from their own citizens. So these reforms should have been taken decades ago, but nevertheless they have been taken and they are yielding the desired result, and today is encouraging. So I urge us all in thanking Mr. President who brought us to this reality, and also thanking the young people who appreciated that we need to keep on to this, especially in a world that is ever changing. We need to, nobody should mislead our youth. We cannot be where we want to be without an irreducible minimum of investment. We have attempted it in the past without success. It is enduring reforms that can create the opportunities for the resources to be generated either from the public or private sectors. And we couldn't be luckier with a president who, in his mindset, is of a profound mind. And particularly given the reality that with democracy, there's always increasing demand on investment. With legislative houses, over 800, and the various local government councils, various state houses of assembly, and the National Assembly, demand on government investment will be always on the increase, and therefore we need more. Luckily, in addition to His Excellency, Mr. President, who, in his experience as Lagos governor, has seen the consequences of it going wrong when we are not investing at the rate you should be. Because there was a time for many people working in Lagos where even crossing the Apombon Bridge is a nightmare, because young men and women who felt angry at society that have left them behind decided to constitute MNS. And Mr. President also chose, as a member of his team, a vice president who have also seen the consequence of what will happen when you underinvest. A lake that is shrinking, that cannot be supported by investment, and a populace that is crowding around the lake created the havoc that we know as Boko Haram, to the extent that one of respected Nigeria's religious leaders, Bishop Matthew Kuka, said at a public forum that Boko Haram is not a religious problem, it's a consequence of climate change, which is brought by underinvestment. So enduring reforms are what we need to stay on course, are what we are sure will take us to the Nigeria that Mr. President is leading us to, and we thank them. We also thank the subnationals. The governor of Imo State spoke on their behalf, and the reforms that have been taken 2 years ago, for which the president is taking most of the heat, are giving more revenues to the subnationals, local government, and the states. I believe some states' revenue have tripled in the last 2 years. And that is why this is a joint venture, but with leadership of the chairman of the Governors Forum and the leadership of the chairman of the Progressive Governors, and in consonance with Section 13 of our Constitution, which says that it shall be the duty and responsibility of all organs of government and of all authorities and persons exercising legislative, executive, or judicial powers to conform to and observe and apply the provisions of Chapter 2 of the Constitution, meaning that the subnationals are to work together with the federal government. I must also thank our development partners for sharing with us their experiences, the experiences of their countries, for sharing with us more resources that can help us through this demanding, but more importantly, for believing in us that we are doing the right thing and the civilized world need to stand by us. Today, we have achieved remarkable success and we will stay the course. I believe when we hear from His Excellency the Vice President, we will know more where we are headed. Thank you very much for.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The vote of thanks is now taken because we're going to invite our special guest of honor to help unveil some truly inspiring books today. I would now like to invite the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris Malagi, to review the books in 3 minutes before I invite our very, very respected special guest of honor today. The Honorable Minister of Information and National Orientation makes his way, and one of the books that has given me great interest is one called Tinubunomics, a book that I've had the privilege of taking a look at. Honorable Minister, sir.
Thank you, Eugenia. Don't be scared, I'm not going to read all the books. Your Excellency, the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, ably represented by our amiable and distinguished Vice President, Senator Kashim Shettima, distinguished Secretary to Government, Senator Akume, the Chairman of the Progressive Governors Forum, His Excellency Governor Hope Uzodimma, the one-time Vice President-elect, the man who rose to the apex of his career and later became the unsworn-in Vice President of Nigeria, Ambassador Babagana Kingibe, and all former secretaries of governments here present, the members of the Federal Executive Council, and all others. Today, the National Communications Team, an essential part of the public communications architecture of the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration, is unveiling 3 books that will be presented by His Excellency the Vice President. The 3 books are: 1, Tinubunomics. This is it. Nigeria's journey towards sustainable development. 2, Leading with Courage, selected speeches of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And 3, Turning Challenges into Opportunities, the Tinubu administration's midterm scorecard. As the title implies, Tinubunomics, Nigeria's journey towards sustainable development, is about fiscal and economic policies and decisions of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, a man who has demonstrated unprecedented boldness in implementing reforms that Nigeria has needed for decades, but has instead shied away from at various times in our history. The book, Tinubunomics, is the smallest of the 3, consisting of about 108 pages, but is power-packed with 11 chapters that offer the most contextual intellectualization of the impact of the renewed hope administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Without doubt, the author of Tinubunomics, Michael Emoferame Igaga, a prolific writer, speechwriter, and development expert, has etched his name in the sands of an epochal time by his courageous and intellectual work. I think we owe him, if he is here, a rousing applause. The second book, Leading with Courage, is a collection of presidential speeches from the past 2 years, defining an era marked by an economic reform, courageous leadership, and relentless pursuit of national rebirth. The president's speeches are marked by a directness that makes them very memorable, and the most deep-rooted being his inaugural address of May 29, 2023, when he said, and I quote, "My fellow citizens, I stand before you, honored to assume the sacred mandate you have given me. My love for this nation is abiding, my confidence in its people unwavering, and my faith in God Almighty absolute." End of quote. The President, as the Chief Marketing Officer of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, understands that an important part of his assignment is in the scripted and unscripted pronouncements he makes directly to the people at various events and engagements at home and abroad. Please grab a copy to read. The third publication, Turning Challenges into Opportunities, is a compendium of words and pictures that amplify President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's footprints in his untiring commitment to the overall positive transformation of Nigeria and its citizens. In this creative book, words are woven together with pictures to achieve impact. The book is very interesting. Together, these three books present a comprehensive and compelling roundup of the first 2 years of the transformational leadership of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. These books underscore the importance of documenting the narrative surrounding the work we do for the benefit of the people who have entrusted this administration with the responsibility of leadership and service for posterity. On this note, let me commend the National Communications team, especially the presidential media team in the Villa. Let me mention specifically Mr. Bayo Onanuga, who Special Advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, who today has become a recipient of the President's CON, Commander of the Order of the Niger, given to him by the President today for his work, not just in journalism, but also in contributing towards the development of the improvement of democracy in our country. Mr. Sunday Dare, also a special advisor to the President, himself a former minister of the Federal Republic, Mr. Tope Ajayi, Mr. Tunde Rahman, Abdulaziz. All these gentlemen working with Mr. President made this possible, the collection of all these books possible. I think they need a round of applause. Mr. President has graciously given the mandate of this communication to this team and those in the Federal Ministry of Information and National Orientation. Our job is, of course, to amplify the efforts and success of the President and the whole administration. We shall redouble our efforts collectively to ensure that we do that. There is no time. May God bless our President and the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Please take it that this is just an abridged review of these three books in 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Step aside so they can move the books. You'll be here with the Vice President.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of Information and National Orientation. He holds that position well. He managed the time so very well. We're very conscious that time is fast spent, and we're grateful to His Excellency. At the moment, we are going to move the books that His Excellency is going to unveil before he makes his address. The Honorable Minister of Information will help with that unveiling. His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has availed us this 26th Democracy Day with a man of intellectual rigor, economist, banker, and former senator. He has asked him to represent today a patriotic Nigerian, the number 2 citizen who sees only green, white, and green. Please help us welcome to the stage His Excellency Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, with a great round of applause as he unveils the book and delivers his special guest of honor address. Honorable Minister, it's over to you now.
Kindly take your seats, please. Kindly take your seats, please. On behalf of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, it is my singular honor and privilege to cherish forever to unveil these beautiful books that will shed light on the activities of the present administration for generations to read and appreciate.
Me?
It is now my singular honor and privilege to invite the representative of the first citizen, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, His Excellency Vice President Kashim Shettima, to deliver his speech. Thank you very much, sir.
The elder statesman, former Vice President, Ambassador Babagana Kingibe GCON. The decade once denied Nigerians the Abiola Kingibe ticket has found resonance and vindication in a second coming that mirrors it in composition and conviction. In President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, a man who has kept the democratic flame alive through seasons of fire and storm. I am honored to share in the weight of this history and the depth of this memory. It might interest the public to know that Ambassador Babagana Kingibe and I hail not only from the same sub-region, we are from the same state. We are from the same neighborhood. Both of us were born bread, buttered, and toasted in the heart of Maiduguri metropolis in the slums of Nimeri Korongoso. We grew up looking up to him as an inspirational figure, a brother serving as an ambassador in far distant lands, in Greece, in Pakistan. And it might interest the public to know that he is married to my sister. The hope of the nation, Senator Hope Uzodinma, Governor of Imo State and Chairman of the Progressive Governors Forum. He started his public service 46 years ago in 1979. Apart from probably Dr. Abdullahi Umar Ganduje, no one has the institutional memory that he possesses. He has been in the system. He was a permanent secretary in Benue State. He was for 8 years the governor of Benue State. He was for 12 years a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. He was a minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and now the secretary to the government of the Federation. A card with 9 lives, Senator George Akume. The head of service of the Federation, Mrs. Esa Didi Walson-Jack, MNI. My colleagues in the Federal Executive Council, and I crave your indulgence to weaponize Hadiza Bala Usman, our head girl, special advisor to the President on policy coordination, to appreciate and recognize all presidential aides present here. Members of the diplomatic corps, heads of government agencies and parastatal, family members of the late Chief Moshood Kashimao Olawale Abiola, another elder statesman, former secretary to the government of the Federation, Boss Gida Mustafa, and Chief Pius Akenyalure. Our keynote speaker, Professor Sam Egu, all senior government officials, members of the fourth asset of the RIM, honored guests, our poet, Mariam Bukar Alhan Islam, another daughter of Borno,